This is the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
Well, welcome in. It's Friday. It's St. Patrick's Day, the 17th day of March, and I thank you so much for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast. Coming up today, a fascinating conversation with a woman called Asra Nomani. Asra has written a book called Woke Army. Asra also happens to be Muslim. She lives in West Virginia. I mean, there are so many things about this woman that fascinate me. I had never spoken with her before, but Asra actually cautions those of us who are of the Christian or Jewish faith, those of us who are, believers who are concerned about the woke orthodoxy that flies in the face of our, spiritual beliefs and our moral beliefs. She actually has a caution, not because she disagrees with taking woke ideology head on, but she has a warning amongst her fellow believers in Islam. Anyway, you'll get it. You'll hear it. It's an interesting conversation, apropos of nothing, but it's a fascinating book and conversation called Woke Army. Also coming up today, Phil Bell at FreedomWorks. We have a really long-ranging conversation about the banking system, and it seems to me that you're finding a Democrat Party that is interested in consolidating our financial institutions at a time when it seems to me just the opposite needs to happen: more diversification, more regional lending, more local lending. So we dive into that and get into some of the semantics, and also why FreedomWorks as an organization says this new rail safety bill they're trying to pass through Congress, FreedomWorks says don't buy it. Also, I thank you for the 5-star reviews and the written reviews. If you want to check out the pictures from Mar-a-Lago, I posted them at the Harumph Society. So those of you that are curious about Mar-a-Lago and want to see it, run over there to chrisstigall.com and you can sign up and become a member of the Harumph Society. I got another post coming up this weekend. I got a lot of thoughts on my mind. I know exactly what I'm going to write for the next 2 monologues at the Harumph Society. I hope you'll enjoy it. It's $5 a month. It's $50 for the year, or if you want to become a founding member, that's awesome. I'll add your name to the wall, and thank you profusely for being one of our founding Harumphers out there, always. And we got some events coming up this year that I think you're going to enjoy that I'm going to let you in on first, and when I can, make them free of charge for Harumphers. So anyway, more incentive to join the Harumph Society. So that's all the business off the top. But let me tell you about John Ruhlman, usmedicalplan.com. Now don't fast forward yet. Don't fast forward. I know sometimes people fast forward through this sponsorship. Don't do that, because I want to tell you about an amazing note that I got from a usmedicalplan.com customer. Angela is her name. She wrote this on Facebook, that Shelley Phillips at usmedicalplan.com, when she reached out, she said, I just had the most amazing and incredible experience with her yesterday. She's one of John Ruhlman's agents. And Angela said, my daughter suggested trying that place Stigall is always mentioning on his podcast. Anyone knows that anyone that knows Chris understands they're not going to endorse a sponsor that he hasn't truly vetted and is the real deal. And I appreciate you saying that, Angela. That's true. I have personally vetted John. We talk a lot. We're going to talk next week. Anyway, Angela said, I called the number and found on the website, or called the number that Chris talks about that's on the website, usmedicalplan.com. Shelley was very quick to return my call, listen to my situation, and it was evident at the very beginning I found the right person. She said I needed to help a young girl, age 20 years old, find affordable insurance. She found on the website the number and called, and anyway, said that this woman empathized with everything going on, and the woman responded, honey, she doesn't have just one mama now, she has 2. I can't explain how much that meant to me at this moment, trying to help this young girl. By 3 o'clock, she had an unbelievable solution for her. I had tears in my eyes. I was so grateful. The young girl was overwhelmed with gratitude for Shelley and usmedicalplan.com finding such an incredible solution for her while getting to experience a feeling of peace that everything was going to be okay. I'll never forget how they helped us out and gave us their contact information to let us know we could call her if we ever needed help. That's what I'm talking about. That's the kind of personal response that you're going to get when you reach out and you need a better medical plan, a more affordable medical plan for you, your family, employees, friends, older folks who are retired on a fixed income. Just give them 2 minutes. Tell them your situation. usmedicalplan.com or 877-410-4321. 877-410-4321. Where are you environmentalists? I'm talking to you. They had a big meeting yesterday. They arrived at the beachfront parking lot early, holding up signs that showed burning wind turbines, sad whales, and caricatures of New Jersey's Governor Phil Murphy. An acoustic song, Save the Whales, blared while a line formed to get into the Wildwood Convention Center, where U.S. Representative Jeff Van Drew held a hearing called an examination into offshore wind industrialization. Fitting that Van Drew would have it there at the Wildwood Convention Center. That's where we had our big Trump rally for Jeff Van Drew a couple of years ago, if you remember, speaking of being down the shore. So it was packed. Van Drew and his hearing were denounced ahead of time by numerous state nonprofits. Why? An examination into offshore wind industrialization. So 8-9 dead whales have washed up and down the coast of New Jersey and New York over the last 2 months. And nobody knows why. And there seems to be no intellectual curiosity at all. And so Van Drew simply says, maybe it's the exploration of development of wind farms. That's something different we've been doing in our waters. And we haven't had dead whales until now, so maybe there's a correlation there. Van Drew's hearing was denounced by numerous state nonprofits. So Save the Whales is a bunch of excrement, is that it? You people don't mean it then. It was all a lie. Plastic in the ocean. You don't mean any of that. You environmentalist morons. Right. Okay. Well, anyway, the 400-plus people inside the convention center Thursday afternoon treated Van Drew, a Republican who represents Atlantic and Cape May counties, like a rock star, giving him a standing ovation as he took the stage. Most in the room wanted to pump the brakes on New Jersey's plan to build a vast wind farm off the coast or kill it outright. This is the most profound transformation of the Atlantic coast in the history of the United States, Van Drew said, repeating the line twice for dramatic effect. Okay, yeah, the Philadelphia Inquirer are very upset about this. Very angry. They want wind farms. That's more important than the whales. Invited speakers included seafood industry executives and liaisons. Executives, who said wind farms would decimate harvests. Bob Stern of Save Long Beach Island told the panel of elected officials that wind turbines would slow ocean breezes, making the shore more hot and humid. He said few have seen what a turbine looks like when it's spinning, but he has. I can only look for about 5 or 6 seconds, he said. A photo of a dead humpback whale sat on an easel off to the side of the stage. Nearly 24 have washed up along the East Coast since December, including 12 in New Jersey and New York. Sorry, I lowballed it at 8. It's been 12 now. Wind farm opponents have hitched their grievances to the whales, asking whether sonar mapping related to the project may have played a role in their deaths. That's right. Wind farm opponents have hitched their wagon to the wind farms. Well, what would you have us hitch our wagons to exactly? 12 dead whales. Can we all agree? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to write me and say you're comfortable with 12 dead humpback whales? I remember, I'm 40, 46? I remember as a kid, Save the Whales was the thing. I associated Save the Whales with Environmentalism 101. Where did you people go? Shut up, wind farms are more important now is your official take? Okay. Another dead dolphin washes ashore in Monmouth County, New Jersey. That's the 8th in New Jersey since last month, the 8th dead dolphin. So that's 12 humpback whales, 8 dead dolphins, and a partridge in a pear tree, and nobody on the left asks a single question. Shut up, it's definitely not wind farms, says the left. And how dare you for even asking? And that lunatic, Democrat turned Republican Jeff Van Drew, holding hearings in a shore community to explore why whales and dolphins are washing up. How dare he? Says the paper of record for South Jersey and the Philadelphia and the southeastern portion of Pennsylvania. How dare a congressman hold a hearing on why whales and porpoises are washing ashore dead? How dare he? Is the official left-wing position. Got it. Okay. Meanwhile, this breaking yesterday from the Fox News and New York Post, Miranda Devine all over this one, members of the Biden family received more than $1 million in payments from accounts related to Hunter Biden's business associates, Rob Walker, and their Chinese business ventures in 2017. Boy, the Bidens were taking money hand over fist from Chinese interests. And I ask you, is it any wonder? Is there any surprise whatsoever that a Chinese spy balloon was allowed to hover overhead for 8 days unencumbered? Now, we're supposed to be very, very upset about an unmanned drone being harassed, bumped, shot down, whatever they're claiming, over the Black Sea by a Russian jet. That is supposed to upset you deeply. But if you're curious as to why a Chinese spy balloon was allowed to hover over the country and Biden didn't do anything about it for 8 days, this might be your answer. Rob Walker worked with Hunter Biden, President Biden's brother Jim, their business associate James Gilliar, and Tony Bobulinski in a joint venture called Sinahawk Holdings. Committee Chairman James Comer obtained records after subpoenaing Bank of America, which revealed that at least 3 Biden family members received lucrative payments from a bank account belonging to this guy Walker. The account is labeled as Robinson Walker LLC, and one of the family members is Hallie Biden, the widow of President Biden's son, Beau. Isn't that interesting? Now, again, sorry for the lady's loss. Sorry she lost her husband. Very sorry she ended up hooking up with her coke-addled, hooker-banging brother-in-law. But whatever. As far as I know, she's a public school teacher. Is. Why would she be on the take for a few $1 million from the Biden family business venture? Why would the widow of Beau Biden be taking money after his death from the family fund from China? A spokesperson for Hunter Biden's legal team confirmed the payments Thursday, but stressed that the accounts belong to Hunter, his uncle, and Hallie, nobody else. Oh, well, that should make us feel good. The bar bouncer, Jimmy Boombots, the square jaw. No, it's all on the level. Just me and Uncle Jimmy taking the payments, and Hallie, but that's all on the level. The records revealed that on March 1st, 2017, less than 2 months after then Vice President Joe Biden left office, State Energy HK Limited, a separate Chinese company, wired $3 million to Robinson Walker LLC. And this went on and on. I'm not going to bore you with the stats, and perhaps you've heard it. I mean, this story goes on and on and on. Basically, what you need to know is over a series of payments, over a series of months, the Biden family, not all at one time, took in millions of dollars in dribs and drabs through this fund. They're money laundering. Ladies and gentlemen, this is nothing more than a story of the Biden family money laundering through a holdings company that they created. 10% for the big guy. We all know the story. Of course, it's almost exhausting to keep saying it. How does Joe Biden afford 300 homes? Or what's he got, 3? I think he owns 3 houses. He's a United States Senator. And Dr. Jill, I don't know that they're rolling in the dough on their own. How do they afford to live the life they lead? How? I mean, they took out a second mortgage on their beach home just back in December. Remember that? They don't have walking around money, folks. You don't take out second mortgages on beach homes when you have walking around money, okay? You don't do that. That smacks of people that are in financial trouble. We know Hunter is. So how do they own all these properties and they're taking out second mortgages? It doesn't make sense. They're shifty. They're dirty. They're cheap. They're hillbillies. Just like the Clintons. They're unsophisticated hillbillies. The Obamas made money in the legitimate way. You know, that's what I mean. I've said this before. The Obamas You can hate the Obamas till your dying day, but I give them all the credit in the world. You talk about turning your brand into a cash cow. They rode that first black couple thing to the moon. And that's why I don't believe for a minute Michelle Obama's ever. People are just convinced this woman's going to run again. I've never believed that. I still don't believe it. The money they make, why would you ever give that up? They're wealthier than most of us will ever dream 50 times over. All they do is just sit around collecting checks. Want me on the cover of a magazine? Hand me a few mil. Want me to write a book or an audio tape or sit on your board? Hand me a few mil. Historic, historic, historic. They don't have to do anything. You want a house? Here's a house. We love you, Obama. Oh, the one. He's like Christ to these people on the left. They just shovel money at him just because he's who he is. They're in Fat City, the Obamas. All they had to do was show up and be historic. He didn't accomplish anything. Most destructive, divisive man ever to hold the presidency. But historic. His skin color, you know. Here's money. Take it. They don't want anything to do with physically being back in office. Now, he still runs everything, but he doesn't need to hold the office to run this husk. He controls the husk by remote. But the Clintons and the husk, they're on borrowed time, man. They don't have that kind of street cred. They're old white people. They got to do it the old dirty Democrat way. They got to have bag people. They got to launder money. They got to set up phony foundations and, collect it under the auspices of doing it for charity or whatever and then funneling it up the chain through their family foundations and stuff. The Bidens and the Clintons are grifters. The Bidens don't have to, they just blow all their money on coke and hookers and houses and cars. They don't save anything. You know they're a wreck as a family. They're a total wreck. They're a bunch of reprobates. So now there's these documents that say the Chinese have been funneling money to the family through this holdings firm in, $10,000, $30,000, $100,000, $300,000 increments. You're like, well, of course that's how they've done it. I'm not kidding when I've called Jimmy the bar back, like he's the bag man. The whole family, Jimmy's wife, they're all on the take. That's how you get it there. It's not like the Chinese go, Joe Biden for deposit in Delaware First Bank. And, we see this deposit from the Chinese government to Joe's bank account. Like it never worked that way. I don't know. It's like this is not a surprise to anybody. I don't know why anybody's pretending to be surprised. It's just more evidence. And it explains everything. I don't know if I said this on the show yesterday, but if I did, forgive me for the redundancy, but it's important to understand fundamentally really where we're going. And it is this. Joe Biden is on the take from the Chinese. Joe Biden is compromised by the Chinese, which is why the media can't talk about it. What are we talking about instead? Who's the biggest threat? Russia. Russia's the biggest threat. And why are they going to continue to talk about Russia being the biggest threat? Donald Trump is your answer. Donald Trump is Russia. Russia's Donald Trump. So a war with Russia, a constant conflict with Russia, talking about the awful, awful, awful things Russia's doing and how we've got to stop Russia at all costs because of this menacing threat marching over the globe. Talking about Russia and how bad they are can effectively neutralize any critics of what we're currently doing. So that is anybody that raises their hand and say, why are we sending all this money to Ukraine? What are our interests there? What are you, a Putin apologist? Are you a Russian stooge like Trump? So I would encourage you to think about it this way going forward. Biden is China, Trump is Russia. So what's the media always going to talk about? Russia, never China. What's the actual truth? The Biden family is enriching itself off of China, is and has, and does. So China is allowed to abuse us, abuse the globe. There's a story here today. They're sending, Politico's kind of mocking it. But the story is China's just sending weaponry hand over fist to Russia. Mostly just rifles and stuff. But they're doing it. China's actively aiding Russia. Who's on the take from China? Joe Biden. While he's out there beating his chest that Russia is the greatest threat to civilization. It's also stupid. If you're a thinking person, it's insulting, actually. The question is how many of your fellow Americans are actually thinking. I know you are. Well, 2022 was the stock market's worst year since 2008. I mean, absolutely awful. Inflation is hamstringing the economy. It's hamstringing our savings. If you've been following the news, you know the Fed keeps threatening to raise interest rates. They're going to do it again here this week, it sounds like, because that's the tool they have to use to keep inflation under control. It's not working, though. This administration is addicted to spending, and they're turning a blind eye on the ramifications of all that spending. So I don't want you to wait and lose your savings and lose more value than you already have. Hedge inflation by turning to Birch Gold Group. Now, I just talked to the Birch Gold people last week at CPAC, and I said, look, I don't know much about gold personally. They said, don't sweat it. And it's not a high-pressure thing, and they're not even asking me to tell you, buy gold, because I don't know anything about it. I can't advise you that way. They're pros, and what Birch Gold is, they're the foremost authority on precious metal IRAs. They'll help you convert your existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold. And the best part is it's completely tax sheltered. If you want to know more about this, would you just text them today? They'll send you a free kit, and that's all they've asked me to say to you is, if you're curious about it, text, and here's the thing, you text my name, Chris, to 989898. All right, so text my name, Chris, to 989898, and you'll get a free info kit on diversifying into gold. That's all. It's just to receive a kit, okay? It's an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau at Birch Gold. Thousands of satisfied customers. You can trust Birch Gold to protect your savings right now with gold. So text Chris to find out more about it at 989898 and let me know about it. You can get that free info kit when you do. Again, text Chris to 989898. Will Bunch, panties in a bunch, that lunatic over there at the Philadelphia Inquirer. He writes this whole story about how young people are ticked off at Biden today. Biden's right turns on oil. Now, again, this is a lunatic fringe leftist at the Philadelphia Inquirer, Will Bunch. But he says that all these eco-wacko kids, the youth out there, are wound up about the Willow. If you haven't heard about something called the Willow Project, the massive up to 600 million barrel oil drilling venture on federal lands in the Alaska wilderness, green-lighted this week by the Biden administration. And if you don't know about that, or you're not wound up about that, you're probably not a young person. Apparently, teens and 20-somethings on TikTok are just livid with Joe Biden that he authorized the expansion in drilling in Alaska. Livid! And this is but one of many compromises that the husk has been offering the left. Did you know that out there? According to Panties in the Bunch at the Philadelphia Inquirer, the husk has turned soft. And the Biden administration has become center-right. Did you know that? That comes as big news to me as a conservative, but Panties in a Bunch is convinced that the Biden administration, in trying to tack center-right and court you conservatives out there, he's inadvertently ticking off the youth. Not making it up. Direct quote from this column. Biden's right turns on oil, crime, and the border is a slap to young voters. And that he may pay for this as a presidential candidate in 2024. Yes. Hey, Will, what do you think is a bigger problem for the husk? His political stances or the fact that he looks like their great-great-great-grandfather when he speaks and talks and walks? You think the youth are like, is it off-putting that Joe Biden is tacking center, supposedly, which of course he's not? Or is it that he is a geriatric old fossil? I have a funny feeling if youth are cooling to Joe Biden, it has nothing to do with his politics, but rather he looks like maybe something they saw at a funeral, laying in a casket. Now, here's something else. Bunch says that if you don't know this, if you don't know why the young people are mad at Biden, you're a boomer. You don't get it. Will Bunch is very connected, you see. He's older than me. I don't know. He's at least in his 50s. I think maybe his 60s. I mean, he's not a young man. But he wants you to know he's connected to the youth on the TikTok. And Will Bunch has been spending time on TikTok. And he wants you people on the left to know, hey, if you don't know how upset the youth are with Biden, you need to spend a little more time on the TikTok like I do. And what you'd learn, says Will Bunch, is that the young people are mad and they may not turn out for Joe Biden. Rising turnout boosted Democrats in 2020 and 2022 amongst youth, but they're more likely to stay home or vote their third party when they're unhappy. Now, let me just say something that is true. It's not something I like to say, but it is true. This is written like an old head. Now, for somebody who claims he's Mr. Switched on and plugged in and on the TikTok and knows what the kids are doing, hey, Will, let me let you in on something. The kids aren't showing up on Election Day and aren't staying home on Election Day because that's old head thinking. I've been covering this now for some time. Let me tell you the new way we do things. We ballot harvest. The youth aren't getting up and going to vote. They didn't turn out for Joe Biden. That's all garbage. They voted, air quotes, for Joe Biden. And how did they do that? Ballot collection and ballot harvesting. People went to them. They're the largest captive audience. Where are you going to go get young people? College campuses. How are you going to get young people to vote on college campuses? For the Democrat. They don't care and they don't know. They're not more engaged. The Democrat Party is more engaged in going and getting them. They didn't show up and turn out. They don't turn out now. It's always been a mythical unicorn bunch of garbage. The young people show up. I mean, they do for Bernie. Every now and again, some wave movement like Obama. This is the moment when the ocean, the seas will slow and our planet will heal. And they think they're following, like a cult-like figure. Yes, they show up for that. Bernie, they'll line the block for Bernie. But they don't show up for this geriatric old moron. They didn't show up for him. Democrats went to get them. Here, fill this in and we'll take it. That's all. So they're not going to show up for Biden next time. The youth are not going to vote for Biden. And I don't care how hardcore Joe Biden is, which he's hardcore. Joe Biden is governing as radically left as anybody we've ever seen. That includes Barack Obama. And of course, this is the third term of Barack Obama. But as we've gone over this, Obama had to sell this to the country through the fossil. He couldn't come out and do this, but the fossil can. That's why he's useful here. That's why he's been useful. So young people don't. Democrats are going to go out and get young people to vote for Joe Biden again. It's not about them losing their passion for him. They never had it. Does everybody understand that? This is not about young people turning out for Biden. It never was, and it won't be next year. It's going to be, can the Democrats go get them to fill in the ballots to harvest? Right, but it's just so funny. He concludes, rightward policy shifts to fight off Fox News about the border and urban crime and gas prices make 18 to 29-year-olds a wild card for Biden. That's right. The sophisticated voter bloc of 18 to 29-year-olds are getting turned off that Biden sounds too pro-Fox News. What a clown. That sounds like it's written by an old head. I'm on the TikTok, and the young people are mad. Yeah, you got it all figured out there, Will. Well done. They're not printing and selling newspapers anymore, Will. Welcome to 2023. The youth don't rise up and show up to vote on Election Day. Election Day is dead. I'm surprised you don't know that. Why is he still writing columns about he's concerned the young won't show up? That's not the way we play this game anymore. We all understand that. Okay. Anyway, I'm not sure what made me think of that, but nevertheless, Marianne Williamson, one of my favorite Democrats ever. Remember this crazy lady? She was supposedly Oprah's spiritual shaman or something. Lunatic. Just one of my. She wears the pantsuits and shows up. Woo! Do we have any stuff from her in the computer?
Not old. I have some of what she was on with Cavuto yesterday.
Was she really? Oh, let's listen to that. Marianne Williamson. She's running as a Democrat challenging Biden. I love this lunatic. She was. Mr. Trump, I understand Donald Trump. And the only way we will defeat Donald Trump is through happiness and unicorns. And she's a straight up stone cold loon, but entertaining as hell. All right, so she was on with Cavuto. Let's listen.
Now there are reports in Politico that you don't practice necessarily what you preach, that there are allegations you've been very mean, condescending, actually cruel to staff members, that you have a long history of yelling and screaming at them. They're afraid of you. What do you say?
This is what they do. This is what they do. These are the hits that they make. Hit pieces come. Mockery from the press secretary to the president comes. Women on The View. These are the dirty tricks that mean you're rattling someone. Somebody's not happy that you're there. Somebody feels threatened by the conversation that you're bringing up. So this is what happens in politics, and
I certainly understand that, but they do quote a few people. You're quite right. Quite a few of these were not identified. But this
have you noticed that?
But this poor Paul Hodes, the former congressman, who had said that, this is consistent with my observation, quoting him, and consistent with behavior I have seen. What do you say?
I could talk about Paul Hodes' behavior, but I'm not going to go there.
I don't care about this woman, and she doesn't stand a prayer, although she does make an interesting point. I will say this. Consider what they did to Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, I think she's a crazy person, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if she's like a full-blown nut who has anger management problems. They're all phonies and liars, so it wouldn't surprise me. Having said all that, think of what the Democrats did to Tulsi. So there may be some merit to Marianne Williamson saying that they're trying to sandbag her, and that there is such uniformed agreement on the left that she needs to be dispatched with quickly and not heard from as a leftist is always telling to me. But the Democrats do this better than anybody else. They really do, and it's always been a complaint of those of you I know who vote Republican, who are conservative. Democrats close ranks, man, and they will assassinate anybody who challenges who they've deemed king. They did it for Hillary. They've done it for Biden. People like Tulsi Gabbard, people like Bernie Sanders, people like this nut. Hell, even people like Amy Klobuchar, Minnesota nice, right? Mommy dearest. Remember what they did to her? Here we are in the era of the woman. They sandbag Amy Klobuchar as some lunatic raging. That's why I call her Mommy dearest, because they said the same thing about her, that she had anger management problems. She ate a salad with a fork in a rage because a staffer brought her a salad in the airport and didn't bring her a fork. She said, never mind, I'll just eat it with my fork or with my comb from my purse, and then you take my comb and you go wash it. Was it? And then she was chucking books at staff. They're doing that to Marianne Williams now. Because when the Democrat Party decides they've got a candidate, that's it. Like, I've never seen, it's remarkable discipline in one sense. It's admirable discipline in one way. The Democrat Party says, we've picked our horse, everybody else stand down, and if you don't, we will take you down. Got it? That's the Democrat Party way. I mean, Republicans don't do that. We see it now. You know, there's 300 of them already shooting at one another, and you go on Twitter and read Republican tweets, it's, oh, he's an SOB, she's an SOB, he's a rhino, she's a rhino. We're a mess, Republican voters, constantly fighting with one another. But to Ronna Romney McDaniel's whatever, I don't know if it's her credit, there is no like party boss. Now they always have an establishment pick, but the voters don't fall in line. That's the thing. Republican voters or conservatives don't fall in line with what the establishment chooses as your candidate. You'll just stay home and say to hell with you. I'm not voting. Uniparty, I'm not interested. Something interesting from Tucker Carlson. He has said this before, and well, you know what? I don't want to say too much. I'm not being cryptic here. I've had offline conversations here recently since the January 6th stuff and the tapes being released, that people are concerned that Fox News or others have gotten to Tucker and silenced Tucker and told him to stop talking about January 6th and the tapes. I can't confirm that. I don't know that any of that's true. I can confirm that people have said, that Tucker has said in private conversations, he doesn't know how long he has at Fox, but he's been saying that for years. I mean, when he first got this show, he's been apparently telling people in offline conversations, I doubt I'll last here long. Now, a conversation from a podcast has surfaced recently, and I don't know when this was recorded. It looks fairly recent, as best I can tell. And this was sent to my attention, and I wanted you to hear the conversation that he's having with two young people on a podcast I've never heard of before. It's something called, let me see here. Want to give it due credit before we air it here. It's a podcast called I'm not sure. I'll get the answer to what it is in just a second. But more importantly is what he says on it. So take a listen to his conversation with these people. It's two guys, Full Send, I think is what it's called. FULLSEND, Full Send podcast. And here he is basically talking about the state of news and the state of media and the fact that he has been in media for most of his adult life. And his father was before him. And how he kind of came, and in many ways as he talks here, he's talking to these young men, they're in their 20s, interviewing him. And he's basically saying, look, you guys are eyes wide open about the media industrial complex. I've been part of it. So I'm kind of slow on the uptake here. Tucker's in his 50s. You know, I'm in my late 40s, and I identify with what Tucker's saying here. These young people are kind of aghast that he's just coming to this revelation, but I wanted you to hear it because it's pretty telling. And it tells you everything you need to know about where his mind is as he hosts the most highly rated show on Fox News right now. And a lot of you and a lot of people that reach out to me say they're concerned he's not long for it. Listen to the way he's thinking right now.
Like, I've spent my whole life in the media. My dad was in the media. Like, that is a big part of the revelation that's changed my life is the media are part of the control apparatus. Like, there's no... Yeah, I know. Because you're younger and smarter and you're like, yeah. But what if you're me and you spent your whole life in that world? And to look around and all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow. Not only are they part of the problem, but I spent most of my life being part of the problem, defending the Iraq War. Like, I actually did that. Can you imagine if you did that?
Well, what do you think? What is one of your biggest regrets in your career?
Oh, defending the Iraq War.
That is it?
Well, I've had a million regrets, not being more skeptical, calling people names when I should have listened to what they were saying. Look, when someone makes a claim, there's only one question that's important at the very beginning, which is the claim true or not? So I say, you committed murder or you rigged the last election. Before you attack me as a crazy person for saying that, maybe you should explain whether you did it or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for too long, I participated in the culture where I was like, anyone who thinks outside these pre-prescribed lanes is crazy, is a conspiracy theorist. And I just really regret that. I'm ashamed that I did that. And partly it was age, partly it was the world that I grew up in. So when you look at me and you're like, yeah, of course they're part of the means of control. I'm like, that's obvious to you because you're 28, but I just didn't see it at all. And I'm ashamed of that.
Isn't that what the media tries to do, though?
It's their only purpose.
Right.
They're not here to inform you. Really? Even on the big things that really matter, like the economy and war and COVID and like things that really matter that will affect you. No, their job is not to inform you. They are working for the small group of people who actually run the world. They're their servants. They're their Praetorian Guard. And we should treat them with maximum contempt.
So, that's Tucker Carlson during a recent interview on something called the Full Send podcast. I don't know what that podcast is. I don't know who they are. I compliment them for getting the interview and really what was an incredibly candid moment from Tucker Carlson. I don't know how widely consumed that will be, but there are many people wondering if that's not him basically telegraphing his days are numbered at Fox. Does that sound like it to you? Media should be held in maximum contempt. Don't trust them. They work for a handful of select powerful people. They're not interested in giving you real news, but cheering on a particular point of view. Does that sound like a guy who's... Or, I mean, I don't want to read too much into it. Perhaps... I assume, and some people have said to me, look, Tucker's made enough money. If he's really under duress or he really feels like Fox is that rotten, he'd just walk. But here's what somebody else said to me when I posed that to them, somebody in the business. They said, well, where's he going to walk to? Like, where can you make the kind of money he's being paid right now? Now, if it's not about money and you don't need it anymore, and maybe he doesn't, I don't know. But the truth of the matter is Tucker Carlson will never make more money, odds are, than he is right now. He won't. So, what do you say to a guy like that? He's not allowed to make money? I mean, as long as he's doing a job that he feels he can do without being told how to do it, I guess you keep doing it. I mean, look, I'm blessed, as I say, I'm blessed to be able to work for employers who leave me alone. But if the day ever came where people started telling me, listen, this is the way you got to do it, these are the things you got to say, these are the things you can't say, if that day ever comes, what I'm very thankful to have is the Chris Stigall podcast to go to. That is something that, listen, I didn't want to do just 4 years ago. I didn't want to do it. And now I realize, do you understand that now I realize as a free speech guy, that may someday be, and I'm not speaking of my current employers here, I'm just saying we're going in a direction, and Tucker sees it, and so do I, and so do all of you who consume media. We're going in a direction where soon the only free speech will be your own island. There will be no network where people who tell the truth work. There will be networks, but they are people who say what the network wants. And so he's saying you should treat every media outlet, and that includes Fox, as most of you understand, you should treat all of them with contempt and maximum suspicion. It doesn't mean that everyone on these places isn't telling the truth, but it means you should strongly consider everything you're watching and hearing and how it's presented, strongly. And I don't know, I just think that's important. This is tricky because as we get into a Republican primary that's going to get increasingly more crowded, and Fox will continue to run specials and promote certain candidates and ignore others, it's something to consider. You just have to consider it. And I'm not saying that negates, validates, or vilifies any certain Republican. I'm just saying it's interesting in the things you're told and the things you're not told. It's like this Russian fighter jet photo. We were shown on a loop. I told you this yesterday. Over and over and over, they've been looping footage of this Russian jet grazing our drone, our unmanned drone. Over and over and over, they showed that. Tucker Carlson finally, after 2 years, airs a few minutes of January 6th footage we haven't seen before. And people's heads exploded. It's wag the dog. It's not new. I know what I'm saying is not necessarily conceptually new, but I do think there's a lot of us that are still in this, in this kind of mindset that, oh, well, if it's on Fox, it must be true. If Fox is saying it, then they're the good guys. And I think Tucker is saying, without saying it, nope. I mean, I work for Fox and I'm on Fox, but don't assume that just because you're watching Fox, it's telling you straight up what's going on and what's true. I mean, I'm seeing it. And I have to say, I share Tucker's point of view. I'm ashamed of the way I behaved for years. I'm ashamed of the way that I assumed certain outposts in media were. There was a time in my life, for instance, when I did talk radio, there was a time in my life where I watched Fox, literally, Fox primetime from 5 o'clock till 10 o'clock at night. I watched every minute of every day because I was terrified I was going to miss something someone on Fox said. And I am so beyond that now. I do watch Tucker pretty regularly. He is, for me, I do watch his show because I find that to be appointment viewing. I think he's doing important work. And I don't watch another minute of that network otherwise. I don't. I'll tune in. I mean, if I'm sitting around and I want to check in on the news to see if the world's blown up, yes, I will turn on Fox. If I'm flying on an airplane and there's a handful of channels to watch, yes, I'll watch Fox News. But I no longer watch Fox News like I did as a naive kid. I mean, guys, I framed newspapers proclaiming George W. Bush the winner of the election. I was so proud and excited of that. And I, like Tucker, I cheered the Iraq War and Bush and Cheney, and I defended them to the hilt, and I dismissed anybody else who attacked them or questioned the war. And now I see what came out of that era. You know, every time I take off my belt and my shoes and I get groped by some guy wearing rubber gloves at the airport, I say, thank you, George W. Bush. Every time a crappy light bulb won't light up the room, I say, thank you, George W. Bush, the guy who launched a war on the incandescent light bulb, among other things. So it's taken me a long time to get here, but I'm here now, and I see that about my colleagues in media. People that own talk radio stations. Oh, that's my talk radio station. I listen to it all the time. Don't be so sure the owners of your favorite talk radio station aren't in the ear and having regular meetings with your favorite hosts about the things they are and aren't to say. I can promise you that's happening. I can promise you. Not going to name names or call anybody out, but you're sophisticated enough to know what you hear and what you don't, and what you see and what you don't. And it's really more about what you're being told and shown and what you're allowed to watch and hear versus what you're not allowed to watch and hear. Because what you're not allowed to watch and hear, you just don't hear about at all. So things are shifting rapidly, is all I'll say. The parties are much less distinct to most of us than they used to be. Media is much less distinct than it used to be. It's kind of melding together. COVID really did it to me. When I started to see that there was no real intellectual curiosity and all parties on all fronts everywhere said, put on a mask, stay at home together, alone together, stay at home, don't question anything, shut up. COVID changed my life radically, forever. I see everything differently. Public education, media, politicians, it's all changed. And so in some ways, COVID was a gift from God because it was like, wow, I had an epiphany. So many people I thought were on our side and that were asking questions and challenging authority weren't at all. You know, and now I see this, we're in this era where Democrats are cheering huge banks. I thought Republicans were the big bank guys. Democrats are the ones now that want 4 big banks and all the regional banks to be crushed or regulated to death. We're in a weird time, man. It's just strange times. And it makes for strange bedfellows. And I'm not all pessimistic and gloom and doom about it. I'm not. I just think the whole landscape has shifted. And we're probably better for having our eyes opened. Hopefully not too late. I mean, the one thing that is always true is the Word of God. My faith in Christ is unflappable and unshakable, and that is always true. And that is my true north, and that's always going to be my compass. All the rest of this is really just noise. God's not surprised by any of it. And ultimately, this world offers us nothing. I know that. But in the meantime, it doesn't mean that we should be simps and not participate and not fight for what we believe in. All right, that's all. That a little too heavy for a Friday? MyPillow.com. Mike has invented yet another innovation in sleep satisfaction. I know because I'm sleeping on it every night. I sleep like a baby, and I'm not making it up. I don't really know how they achieved it, and I know it sounds almost phony or made up. In fact, I heard it, when they said, hey, we've made a new MyPillow, and it's cool now. It's the softest and smoothest and coolest pillow. I said, how? What do you mean? It's a fabric technology that regulates your body temperature. And I can tell you this because I'm a guy that kind of sleeps a little hot. And if I'm too covered up at night, I get hot. But I haven't felt hot. And I know this is going to sound strange, but you're going to have to just trust me and experience it for yourself. This new MyPillow 2.0 thing, they've designed a cool surface. It's engineered for comfort. It's a fiber. It's not a finish. It's a fiber. So the pillow is kind of smooth but finely textured, and it allows it to breathe in a way I've not experienced in a pillow before. Hard to explain without feeling it, but here's what they're going to do for you. If you use my name, Chris Podcast, if you go to Chris Podcast as your promo code, when you go to mypillow.com, you click on the radio listener square and type in Chris Podcast. That lets them know you listen to the show, but most importantly, it gets you half off. You buy one pillow, you get one for free. I guess that's better than half off. I'm not good at math. You get an entirely separate pillow for free. So one pillow you buy, you get one for half off. Got that? Got that. Now, on everything else at mypillow.com, save up to 66% if you use my name, Chris Podcast. Seriously. So that's the coffee, that's the robes, that's the slippers, that's the Giza Dream Sheets, that's the dog bed. Dean loves the MyPillow dog bed. He loves it. Sleeps on it every day since we got it. I love these sheets and these pillows. They are so comfortable. Christine loves her MyPillow slippers. There's lots of, I'm even sipping some My Coffee. Mike's got his own line of coffee now. It's all American made. You can feel great about who you're buying the products from, but also who makes them. Great customer service, too. If you call 800-932-5056, tell them Chris said hi, say Chris Podcast, you'll get that big deal discount on all the stuff, and then the free MyPillow 2.0 with the purchase of one. A 10-year warranty, a 60-day money-back guarantee. Use Chris Podcast at MyPillow.com. So Phil Bell over there at FreedomWorks, listen, I have lots of questions for you. Chief among them, what do you make of what we're hearing about the state of the banking system at this hour? I hear very mixed messages. I wrote something similar at the Harumph Society yesterday, which is over my Substack, and that is even inside the Republican ranks, there seems to be great debate about the way forward and the state of our financial system. And I would just ask you to give me your 30,000-foot view on where you think things are and our role, if any, as a taxpayer in it.
Well, let's start with the basics. First of all, if you think about it in general, most banks really don't have much in the way of problems. What tends to happen that leads to a run on the bank and what we've seen over the past few weeks, and then what we saw back in 2008, is a loss of confidence. Why do those losses of confidence happen? Either A, you have something like a ratings decline, which is what Moody's was prepared to do to Silicon Valley Bank, and that's what sparked the run there, or you have a situation where another entity won't become a counterparty to trades or whatnot that banks make, and that's what happened way back with Lehman Brothers and so forth back in 2008. Now, if those things take place, that doesn't necessarily mean that you, as an account holder or a borrower or otherwise, are going to be in trouble. But it does typically cause, a loss of confidence, some kind of emotional reaction, and then you end up having what we have as being a run. So in general, if you look at most banks, you are not going to see anything structurally wrong with them. So that's important to remember. But then number two, we've got to think about the structure that the banks operate in. They operate in a highly regulated structure, And what should that do? It should scare the heck out of you, because what highly regulated structures do is it means it limits their ability to lend, it limits their ability to invest, it limits their ability to understand problems, and it causes us to depend on whether it's the federal government or these rating agencies or otherwise to think, okay, everything is fine. And that's why, whether you're talking about consumers, small businesses, large businesses, or otherwise, capital is so hard to come by, and we constantly go from pillar to post, where we have one crisis, maybe the S&L crisis in the 1980s, to the housing crisis in the 2000s, to the whatever the heck you call this crisis right now, the COVID, Joe Biden insanity crisis. That's what leads to it, and that's really where our focus should be.
That guy they call Mr. Wonderful, the Shark Tank guy, Kevin O'Leary, he was on with Tucker last night. I think Tucker nearly popped out of his seat because O'Leary was saying something, and I don't want to, put words in his mouth, but I'm pretty sure I'm interpreting this right. O'Leary, of course, he's made his millions or whatever, so he can say this, but it was really sort of an amazing take, and it was basically that people are pulling out of community banks and regional banks and smaller banks and going to the big guys because the big guys are super protected and highly regulated, and that's where he's putting his money, and that's where the money is the safest bet. He was basically suggesting that, small and regional banks shouldn't exist, which I found sort of an amazing take, and not one I agree with, and not one I don't think Tucker agreed with either. I wasn't exactly sure what he was driving at. I couldn't follow it, but he was basically anti-regional bank, which I don't understand that take. Can you get me there?
No, I don't understand that take either. I am a fan generally of Kevin, so I try to follow some of what he says. So I'm going to have to go back and watch that. But
I might be misrepresenting it, but I don't think I am. It was a little weird.
Yeah, he will from time to time jump on to fads, and so this seems like something there. But what he is saying mirrors the way that a lot of businesses and otherwise are thinking, because going back to Silicon Valley Bank, what was the big thing that came out about it? Not so much that individual depositors whose deposits are insured up to $250,000 were concerned. It was that you had these larger companies, such as Roku, which was the most prominent, that had a large amount of money in that bank, and then suddenly they were being told, well, you know what, you may not be able to get access to this money until after we sell the bank and sell other assets in the event that it's seized. Now, just as a little bit of a background, generally what happens, you will have bank examiners from either the federal government for federally chartered banks or your state banking regulators to monitor and routinely assess the strength of different banks. And if they get to the point where they believe that the bank is no longer stable, that it can't cover its deposits, that it has too many bad loans outstanding, what they'll do is they will seize the bank, which is basically take it over, and then attempt to sell it as soon as possible to some other operator. So that we saw a lot of that in the 2008 era. And what happened with Silicon Valley Bank is exactly the same thing. The California banking regulator seized Silicon Valley Bank. Now, when this happens, your deposits beyond the insured level become unsecured liabilities of the bank. That's just a very complex way of saying the bank or what's left of the bank owes you money, and then after everything is settled up, if there's any money left, then they'll give it to you. Now, the reason why this is, you can obviously think this is a problem for you as an individual depositor or me, but it can become magnified if you have someone like Roku who has thousands of employees to pay, and they put the money for the paychecks in this bank, and now suddenly they're not going to have access to it.
So,
but what that brings me, go ahead.
No, please.
I ramble when it gets to this, so no, you jump in.
Well, no, but I think to your point, what's sort of interesting is a friend of mine just messaged me and said that he had he runs a business, and he had his business account, I think roughly like a $500,000 account at a smaller bank. He has taken that business account, withdrawn it from this smaller bank, and put it into Chase this week. So small and larger, mid and large size businesses are, I guess, moving a lot of money to what they see as large, healthy, safe financial institutions right now. And are we better off for that, do you think?
No, we're worse off. The simple answer is this. If well, first of all, here's the thing. What makes J.P. Morgan Chase so much more better than Silicon Valley Bank? Well, part of it is they've created this regulatory moat that I described before that sort of institutionalizes them there. But what have we seen? If you can have an institution, a worldwide institution like Silicon Valley Bank, experience a silent run and ultimately end up in this situation, there's nothing to say that similar things couldn't happen to J.P. Morgan Chase, and maybe with good reason. Mm-hmm. So what it's incumbent upon all of us to do, whether it's individuals like us, medium-sized businesses or large businesses, is have accounts at different places. That way, if anything happens, and as conservatives, we know we can get unbanked El Quico, as Rush used to say, because someone at Bank of America says, "Oh, well, you sell guns. We don't like guns. We're not going to bank you anymore." Well, you may lose access to the money you need to pay your employees there.
Yes.
So have multiple banks, have personal relationships with those bankers, and that's the way that you succeed.
It does seem much like investing. Not that I'm an investment guy, but it seems like what you're saying is much like your investments. If you are an investor, same with banking. Diversifying is key. Having all your eggs in one basket financially is never a good thing. Is your point?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Heck,
right.
It could even be something that your local branch is closed one day and you can't get there. Have multiple banks.
Janet Yellen yesterday on Capitol Hill. Interesting audio. Ron Johnson, senator from Wisconsin, number 40 here, Fast Eddie, asks her, what's caused inflation? Here's her answer, or non-answer.
Would you agree those are the top three causes of inflation? Deficit spending, high energy costs, and supply dislocations?
I don't believe that deficit spending is one of the main causes of inflation.
I mean, inflation is too many dollars chasing too few goods.
Well,
so when you're printing all this out, so do you know in the first 3 fiscal years of the Biden administration, you know how much the total deficit spending is going to be?
We had an economic collapse that was caused by
right, and
pandemic.
we were certainly coming out of that because there's all this pent-up demand and a sloshing around of trillions of dollars.
So that's one exchange, Ron Johnson. You don't believe that all this spending causes inflation? She says, quote, this is the Treasury Secretary now. I don't believe deficit spending is one of the main causes of inflation. Then one more, and I'll get your comment here, Phil. James Langford from Oklahoma talking with her about this very thing we were just discussing, bank mergers. Take a listen.
We have seen the mergers of banks over the past decade. I'm concerned you're about to accelerate that by encouraging anyone who has a large deposit in a community bank to say, we're not going to make you whole, but if you go to one of our preferred banks, we will make you whole at that point.
Look, I mean, that's certainly not something that we're encouraging.
That is happening right now.
That is happening because depositors are concerned about the bank failures that have happened and whether or not other banks could also
No, it's happening because you're fully insured no matter what the amount is. If you're in a big bank, you're not fully insured if you're in a community bank.
Well,
so, I mean, what they're saying is to the Treasury Secretary, you have an outsized control in the behaviors of this economy, and she just refuses to acknowledge it. Phil.
Oh yeah, of course. This is first of all, could we finally end the fiction that Janet Yellen is capable at her job? I mean, I see so many people who want to tell me, "Oh, she's so wonderful, she's one." No, she's terrible, and she is emblematic of one of the worst aspects of our country, which is that we concentrate so much power with unelected bureaucrats like her, and even worse, the Federal Reserve. You know, the guys that have been jacking up interest rates, which is one of the things that led to this current crisis, not to mention promoting the printing of money and all of the other things that led to the inflation, which Senator Johnson pointed out. That is critical. It has to stop. But, you know, it's just so surprising that well, actually, I should say it's not surprising. They don't want to acknowledge it because if she acknowledges it, she is basically pulling the mask off. And when you're talking about liberal Democrats, masks always matter, on the reality of what they do, which is they will spin you into oblivion in every way possible. And inflation is only the latest form of that.
So there is, Phil, this consolidation of power in banking has been driven also by what we all are getting familiar with called ESG. And an interesting story yesterday, Ron DeSantis joined forces with 18 other governors to reject Joe Biden's ESG agenda, claiming the push is a direct threat to the economic freedom of American retirees. Governors in 19 states total, DeSantis' Florida, and then 18 others, formed an alliance yesterday in what they described as an effort to ensure American retirement funds are not used for woke investments. I'm hearing this from a lot of regional bankers, too, that larger, banks that back them are coming to them with this ESG stuff. Who are you lending to? You're not lending to gun people or coal people, are you? So that's how they bully these small regional banks, too. I mean, it seems to me, whether it's Yellen or whether it's this ESG crap, regional banks are clearly a target now. Like they're an enemy. The consolidation of banking is where they'd love us to go, it seems to me, the left, that is.
Oh, yeah. And think about what happened yesterday in the context of what we're talking about. All of these major banks decided to put, I think the number was $30 billion, into First Reserve Bank, FRC is the stock symbol. That has been the latest one that's been concerning as potential for collapse. So they all put $30 billion in deposits, and it was a variety of banks at different amounts in to backstop this bank. Well, who do you think is going to be calling the shots now at this regional bank? Well, it's going to be all of these major banks, many of which are woke, such as State Street. I used to work at State Street as an aside back before it became woke. State Street, JP Morgan Chase, you name it, up and down the line. Yeah, they're absolutely going to be doing that. And what's even scarier is, beyond just calling the shots at these regional banks, what they're also doing is silently imposing their will on us. Because if you can't raise money, borrow money, or raise equity to do something as simple as an oil drilling project, well, what does that mean for the cost of gas? And then what does that also mean for the cost of electricity if you're an EV fan? It means it's going up.
Yeah.
And those costs are being imposed on us simply because of the ESG desires of this select few. I remember the time when liberals would say it would be wrong for those few, largely wealthy people, to impose their will on everyone else. but that's what they're doing.
Yeah, it's bad. You can just sense it. And I'm no sophisticated economist type as you are, our buddy Steve Moore is, but you can just feel the little guy is getting squeezed financially, just in the marketplace, just buying and paying for goods and services. And then you look around and you start to see people, pulling out of small banks, running to these big banks. So it's like the powerful and the wealthy and the elite are consolidating power and wealth. And average folks are getting squeezed. It's just as plain as the nose on your face if you're paying any attention. Phil, let me pivot quickly to one more story, unrelated, but I had to get to it because I'm sure much will be made of it. The Washington Examiner says influential conservative group comes out against bipartisan rail safety bill. It's your group, Phil Bell.
Yes.
You're the influential conservative group coming out against rail safety. Why do you hate rail safety at FreedomWorks, Phil Bell?
First of all, I'm the biggest rail enthusiast you'll ever meet. I love trains. I was born in Philadelphia. Conrail used to be based there. The Pennsylvania Railroad used to be based there. Philadelphia is a great railroad city. The only problem here is that this bill is not at all about railroad safety. Now, not one provision of this legislation, the so-called Railway Safety Act of 2023, has anything to do with safety. None of it would have either prevented or mitigated what happened in East Palestine, Ohio. And most importantly, one of the key provisions, which is requiring 2 men in the cab on each freight train, would be a direct giveaway to rail unions that have been lobbying for this for a long time. And one other important point here, the train that derailed that caused all of this mess in the first place had 2 men in the cab. And the National Transportation Safety Board has not been able to find fault with their actions. So tell me again then why we should pass a bill that gives Pete Buttigieg, someone who is wholly unqualified to even ride a bike, the ability to dictate how freight trains are operated all across the United States. It's a terrible idea, and it's even worse that we have some of our conservative friends jumping on that bandwagon.
And you know what's amazing to me is that we're supposed to hate big rail, right? But big banks are A-okay. Big finance is fine, apparently. And by the way, big wind energy is fine. It's killing whales and dolphins, we think, but it's fine. Shut up. Don't save the whale. Like, it's just weird what the American left's decided is okay. Big rail, not okay. Big wind, just fine. Big banks, just fine. It's very inconsistent.
And the crazy part is the left, especially when it comes to rail, they vacillate. So some days they love trains when you remind them that rail is the most efficient way to move large amounts of goods. I think it's one for every gallon of fuel you can move goods about 500 miles by rail. And then they also love rail when you're talking about passenger trains. Then later on they wake up and say, oh, but rail are owned by these private companies, and these private companies invest private dollars to make the trains continue to run. Well, that's terrible. Private companies shouldn't be able to do things that help the people. No, we don't like that. And, of course, then they come out with legislation like this. But, again, sadly, we have some Republicans, even Republicans from big rail states where rail is what is driving their economy, have joined this bill, and it's shameful.
Phil Bell, this was a great conversation. Director of External Affairs at FreedomWorks. I hope we can have you back, my friend. Thank you for all the insights today.
Anytime. You let me know. Thank you for having me on.
Asra Nomani joins us. She's a former Wall Street Journal investigative reporter, author of a brand new book I hope you'll go pick up called Woke Army. It just rolled out last month, as a matter of fact, and it's going gangbusters. And Asra, first of all, thanks a lot for your time this morning. Hello.
Oh, my gosh. Thank you so much. After Northern Virginia, you guys are ground zero for pushing back against the woke army. I love it. I'm so happy to talk to you all.
Now, I didn't know this about you. I'm reading this from your bio. So these are not my words, but rather your bio. And then maybe you can backfill for me. This says that you voted for Democrats almost your entire life, but now you're sort of focused on why Democrats have been losing their grip on the subject of education. Is that about right? And if so, could you explain?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually talking to you from my hometown of Morgantown, West Virginia. And so I just say that because it kind of gives you some political context. I'm what you would call a West Virginia Democrat, right?
Okay.
Somebody who grew up here in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, seeing firsthand the casualty of the big coal companies, right? Sometimes on our workers, and thus unions rose, right? Just for fundamental human rights. It wasn't the kind of corruption we see today. It was about fundamental human rights and
traditional labor issues.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Traditional labor issues of, hey, we shouldn't die when we go work for a living, right? It's like not a big issue. Not what we have today, which is the teachers union saying, hey, teachers can keep secrets from parents. And I covered the labor unions for the Wall Street Journal, and I hung out. I know you didn't see this in my bio either. I hung out, yes, but hold on, hold your breath, with Jimmy Hoffa.
Oh,
Junior.
Ooh, okay. Thought you might know something.
I don't know anything, but I went literally to the parking lot, where they wonder if his father was buried beneath. And so that was a different era, right? The political spectrum was so different then. And as you have all seen with West Virginia also, the state has turned, right? The governor is a Republican. The state legislature is a Republican. I have old classmate friends like Michael Oliverio, a nice Italian name, right? Mm. They own Oliverio's restaurant here in Morgantown. And Mike grew up also like me as a Democrat and is now a Republican state legislator because unfortunately too, the Democratic Party has very much shifted. And I don't have this in my bio, but I to this day self-describe as a classic liberal,
yes.
Which you as a teacher and educator, supporter of our schooling also value as, just the classic liberal, like education of the books, philosophies, right?
I don't want to go too far in assigning this to you, but I talked with Dr. Naomi Wolf last week.
Yes, great, wonderful.
She's written an open editorial in which she says, I'm sorry to conservatives for not understanding how misrepresented the other side was for so long on critical issues. I don't know if you feel the same, but and again, I don't know that she would call herself conservative or a Republican voter today, but she feels very misled by people she used to trust to tell her the truth about what's going on.
Yeah, I was, sitting in the electronic green room for an interview and was able to listen to her interview on TV this week on that open letter. And I think it's really testimony to the idea that we most value, which is intellectual growth. We have to shift and move as we get new input. And that's why, too, I always hope, unless people are just really mean, and bullies, yes. I always want to have open conversation with folks because we shift in our lives,
yes,
right? You're such a different person, I'm sure, from the younger you. And so, I think for me, too, the vantage point that I've got that I think Naomi also has is that I ran with and learned from some of the best in journalism. I learned investigative reporting, a lot of the tricks and craft that I bring to the book, Woke Army, I learned in a newsroom at the Wall Street Journal. And I am also stunned by the partisanship that I now recognize happens in the media. I didn't really see it when I was sitting there amongst news decisions being made about politics and investigations. And I think when I grew up in 80s and 90s in journalism, it was way different.
Yes.
We really did try to follow the facts where they led us, follow the reporting. And now it's like I see it all the time now where people just want to report, what their point of view is and leave out the rest. Yeah.
Asra Nomani is with us. She is author of a brand new book called Woke Army. Now, and not having met you before, forgive me, but based on what I read about your concerns specific to Asian discrimination, I don't know if that's your own background or if maybe you could tell us a little about that. But here's one thing I'll just say generally, and then please take it away. And that is, Asians generally, I know this is sort of a broad generalization, but we've certainly heard this before the Supreme Court recently at the collegiate level. Asians academically outperform all other groups in the United States, and they seem to be the ones that are maybe the most harshly punished because of woke ideologies to just promote people because of their skin color alone rather than academic performance. So that's a lot.
Yeah.
You take it away.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And, as the critical race theory activists and the anti-racism consultants love to say, they want to go back to people's, quote, lived experience, right?
Yeah.
And that has been exactly my lived experience. I came to the United States at the age of 4 from India. My dad had started a PhD program at Rutgers University in New Jersey. My mom was babysitting the first couple of years with just her and my dad in the country to raise money for my brother and I to come follow them. On a TWA jet, we arrived, and in this country, we worked hard. We went to the flea market every Sunday to sell these kurtas. I'm wearing one today. They're the tunics that are hand embroidered. You can find them at Gap's now, right? At the Gap store. And we would sell them at the flea market to raise enough money to pay the bills, moved to West Virginia. My dad was living on salary of a professor as we were. And it was in this country then, through our public school system actually here in West Virginia, that I mastered English, and me, this young girl who knew not a word of English, became a reporter for the Wall Street Journal at the age of 23.
Wow.
Yeah, that is the American story. And we used to celebrate that, but now, fast forward, and my son is 20, and he got to go to this, he was accepted into this top school called Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology through an aptitude test, a merit test on math and science. The essay was a math-solving problem. It was about how you thought, not what the answer was. He got in. And then after George Floyd's killing, the entire country turned upside down, right?
Yes.
And it was open season on merit as a value, because this network that I talk about, the woke army, they need to dumb our kids down in order to be able to indoctrinate. And how do they do that? They literally get rid of advanced learning in our classes and in our schools.
Yes.
And replace it with what? Ethnic studies, social emotional learning that gets into their gender identity, the privilege bingo games, nothing that is about fundamentals of education. And so that was our experience. Our lived experience was that we went from just doing our thing in the United States to suddenly becoming the enemy. And our school had 70% Asian kids. So we became a target, and we ended up in the crosshairs of this woke army because we had become the inconvenient minority that had dared to succeed in the new America that they wanted to describe as governed by white supremacy, right?
Yeah, it's tricky because I assume you do not have white skin.
I don't. And in fact, my family and my parents lived under white supremacy, under British colonial rule.
Right.
So, yeah, I can't even, you saw the Oscars the other night?
Yes.
I don't know if you watched them.
I heard about it,
There's a famous dance now that is on TikTok all over the place, and it was featuring two of the characters are men who are competing against the, quote, British, white supremacists in a dance competition. Can you believe it? And lo and behold, you will not believe this. There was not even an Indian on the stage at the Oscars doing the dance. Like, that's how much we have become inconvenient for them.
Well,
Can you believe that?
I can't. I mean, I guess in one way I can, because they're just maybe they're either ignorant to history or their own irony. But what's interesting to me too, Asra Nomani with us is the book is Woke Army. I hope everybody gets it. I think as we have a southern border that's wide open, and I think there are probably millions of people who legitimately just do genuinely want to get here, even if illegally, to make a couple of bucks. I think that's probably most of them. And what I find interesting is while that may be a political strategy in the short run, I think a lot of those people are personally conservative in the way they lead their lives and raise their families. And I'm not so sure that people with brown skin, be they Asian, be they Indian, be they, from places like China or Japan or, South America, I'm not so sure that in time this doesn't have a political backlash of its own for Democrats.
Oh, yeah, and it's happening because that is the ultimate irony is that we as, quote, people of color chose this quote, white supremacist nation, as our home. And then, Chris, you love it. We become the white supremacists, It's just, and that's why they will lose because their strategy is filled, just like you said, they have a blind spot to their own irony and their own hypocrisy, really. And so the way we're seeing this, so what the woke army does in the book is I chronicle the unholy alliance between people from my own community of Islam who have, sought a political Islam in the world, aligning with the far left to racialize everything so that they move up in the hierarchy of human value.
Yes.
So what happened after 9/11, of course, people rightfully criticized Islamic extremism, as I did also, but then we got targeted, just like we are in the education debate, as racist.
Well, and so, I'm glad you brought up Islam because I saw several Muslims in the Michigan public school debate stepping up and speaking out against the sexuality of children, and gender confusion and all of that. So there's another common thread, is there not?
Yes, exactly. And so for the last 15 years, we have seen this unholy alliance of the really, hardcore Muslim extremists in my community aligning and entering into the Democratic Party, right? And using it as a Trojan horse for political power. So think of Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Linda Sarsour, these activists that are in the political world. So they created this alliance, and the left built this, had a blind eye to their own incompatibility with the West and classic liberal values. And so now, just like every other issue with the woke army, they're going to come for your kid. And now the transgender activists in the woke army are coming for the kids of the Muslim families.
Yes.
And that is not going over so well.
I was going to say, I don't know. I don't know my Islam well, but I have a funny feeling, much like the good book in Christianity, not real high on the concept of you can be whatever gender you want to be.
Yeah, the thing is, with everything in life, every religion is open to be interpreted in many ways, and that's another debate, of course, right? But the issue is, even in conservative Christianity, whether your morality concludes, what they would call a socially conservative view about the LGBTQ issues as they're described, let's be clear about the difference, is that whatever your moral position, you are not going to criminalize it to kill people, of
course,
right? Based on their gender, based on their gender and sexuality. And so, I want to just make that point because what the left has done is, with the Muslims that they have aligned with, these are folks who are supporting governments that kill folks that are gay and transgender, and that is something that I know the most socially conservative Christian would not accept,
Of course.
And so, so see that distinction because it's really important. And just know that sometimes what we are warning also as Muslim reformers is we are warning our socially conservative Christian friends, like, be careful in even building that alliance with some of the real fundamentalist Muslims on these issues.
Great point.
Because they actually go further than you would ethically and morally even believe.
Course.
Yeah.
Of course. What a great point.
Yeah, I just want to make that point because for the last 20 years, we have been fighting that Muslim establishment, and now all of a sudden there's an issue that, they've gone too far and they're coming after my kid. But be careful because they still want, Muslim supremacy, so don't be fooled. And I'm sure nobody would be, but I wanted to point that out.
No, that's smart and a very important thing to be mindful. It's a strange bedfellows thing. I think we're all,
Yes.
when you're in a cultural war, you look for allies, even if they're not typically your ally. And you got to be careful who you jump into bed with. Asra Nomani, this book is called Woke Army. I can't wait to get my hands on it. And I hope this is not the last time we speak.
Oh, yes. I want to keep talking with you because the really fundamental point that I want to leave everyone with is that this woke army depends on silencing you through shame.
Yes.
And so everybody has grown up in some form or another experiencing that dynamic. It is human to us, but just be mindful of it. That's what I'm trying to do in the book, is walk you through case after case after case of how they use these tactics of shame to hijack your brain into silence and fear. And so just like Chris, use him as an example with humor and intellect. Fight, fight, fight.
Thank you, Asra.
Oh, thank you, Chris.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.